and welcome to Left Coast Live. It is Wednesday, February 5th. I am your host, Dieter McBusiness, the offensive progressive from now on. And I am joined, as always, by the one and only stateless Patriots, Stat Pat from the Central Valley. We are California lefties talking to you about national politics. And with us today is a very special guest, someone very established in the progressive YouTube community. Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah.
The Soy Pill. What's up, dude? How are you?
Hey, I don't know how I feel about that intro. Very established. I've been around for like a few years, but I just got here. I feel like I feel so honored, but thank you.
It's well deserved.
Yeah,
honestly.
We've only been here for Stat Pat was familiar with your content before I was, so we like the longer form, thoughtful stuff. Stat Pat did a video on Jimmy Dore that Mike Figueredo from the Humanist Report promoted a while back.
Nice.
And it's this
something
attention
about Jimmy Dore being dumb, right? I'm assuming.
Of course.
Yeah, not to take him seriously anymore. Yeah.
It was before he even he devolved even further, before he got into like a lot more
anti-vax.
Anti-vax,
defending the Proud Boys.
Yeah,
just full on MAGA essentially.
Even before that shit. Yeah.
Cool.
The market
thank you
forces
so much for having me, and I'm still surreally dealing with the fact and the concept of people like knowing who I am. It's very strange. I've yet to be like approached in real life, but the fact that like someone just told me, oh yeah, he's familiar with your content is insane to me, because a few months ago that was me, my mom, and like a couple of my friends. So like that's
you have quite a few followers. You have quite a few subscribers though, aren't you? At like 50,000 or something?
It was like 41 today, which is again, I'm still like adjusting to it. Like I am, and the fact that like I have more than 10 people watching right now is crazy to me. I really appreciate it. Like I'm like, oh, God bless every single one of these people, and I'm still trying to reply to every single comment, but I can't. I'm losing it. It's growing too fast, but that's a good thing and a bad thing.
Yeah, I
love it.
So a big portion of your following right now is from your recent Matt Walsh video. Matt Walsh is a racist.
That doubled my subscriber count.
Yeah, like 700,000 views, and it's an excellent video. It's actually, I think it's actually like the first one I actually watched from you. But like the one before that, the getting to know how to talk to Trump supporters.
Yeah,
fucking excellent. What I loved about that one is you bringing up that debate between Sargon of Akkad and Michael Brooks. Because I remember that too. I used to be a big Sargon fan way back in the day. I actually used to be a little center right, and then I realized, oh, Sargon's just a blabbering fucking idiot.
Charlatan,
charlatan, doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. And I love revisiting that debate because Michael Brooks just fucking stomps him like he's just like a little ember, you know. I found that an excellent inclusion. I love your your media references here and there. Your editing is great. I think you got a really good formula for your videos so far.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm going to try to crank more out, and every day at my job now, I'm just 24/7 thinking about making more content, so I can feel the transition so much. It's just like, everyone go subscribe to my Patreon, and you'll get so many more videos.
For me,
when I started out, I just wanted to make stuff that would last, so that no matter when people watch it, it would be useful and relevant. And damn, was I right about conservatism. I didn't realize, we call it scapegoat politics now, but back in the day, just analyzing the intellectual concept of like fascism's favorite formula, thinking about how, your life doesn't suck because you suck. Your life sucks because of those brown and black immigrants taking your job or whatever. Realizing that was the basis of all right-wing media. I did that video now 3.5-4 years ago or something. And it's like, man, was I right? And I called in one of my early videos too, I called the Democratic Party a party of losers. And I turned out to be right. This election, as much as I wanted Kamala to win, this election did wonders for my intellectual credibility.
Yeah, it's it's as bad as it gets. You're like a little vindicated. Well, you know what? This sucks, but hey, I was right. Like,
yeah, that's my thing. I struggle with too. Is like, what good is being vindicated when there's just
the world is falling apart?
Like 15 new nightmares per day. It's like, oh my fucking god! Like, is it even worth it?
Yeah, no, totally. I do want to ask you actually, Dieter.
So
I think you mentioned this before, but you're a former conservative, or at one point you were some.
Yes. Yes.
conservative.
So
And
if you watch my first video or second video, I explain it. But basically, I come from a household defined by right-wing religion, right-wing military, and right-wing corporate America.
yeah.
So I actually was born into, my parents weren't, but my dad was independently successful. And I was kind of born into the culture of the GOP ruling class.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize it until I really got out of college. And I was like, wait a second. I grew up sailing with guys that worked for Reagan. And, you know, I grew up sailing and playing golf with, you know, people who were like part of the Koch family.
Wow.
So, I mean, yeah, like the ruling class. So like, I understand the sociopathy, and that's why when I see things like Joe Rogan become a sociopath, I'm not surprised, because that level of success, that level of privilege. See, I mean, like privilege comes in different sizes, shapes, and colors. And it definitely comes in more size than difference than anything else. Right.
Yeah.
And when you have, you know, I say 0.1 percenters don't have 10 times as much political power as 1 percenters. 0.1 percenters have at least 100 times as much political power as a 1 percenter. And the economics of political power is something that I think 90% of Americans are completely ignorant of. They have no idea where the political power in this nation resides.
Yeah, I read a book on this because I saw there was kind of this reactionary narrative where for so long progressives were pushing this idea that money buys politics, you can buy politicians off, and then you kind of learn as you look into it, like there's never someone just handing like a bag full of money with a dollar sign on it to a politician and them changing the law, although I'm sure that does influence somehow behind the scenes. But you read this book, Dark Money, and you realize that these Koch families and these billionaires, it's not just about paying people to change their mind. It's more, I'm going to help get people elected that already agree with me by doing these like smaller campaigns. I donate millions and millions to their like grassroots little advertisements in these cities, and I prop them up. And as they escalate, now they're in a bigger position of power. Now it doesn't matter that I'm not giving them $1 million to say what I want. They're saying what I want because I got them there, and now I can give them money. And it's kind of this like post hoc thing where I'm paying the people who I know will already support what I want them to support. And it's insane. Yeah, they do have an undue amount of influence.
It really is like a self-reinforcing feedback loop. And it's just been like just an incestuous thing for years and years and years, decades at this point. It like legalized bribery, the advent of Citizens United, meaning corporations are people and money is free speech. It has contributed to just like this crisis of capitalism that we're in the midst of right now. It's with all this unchecked money turning into unchecked influence and power, and it's like we're speeding off the rails at 1,000 miles an hour, and no one knows where the break is.
It's funny too, though, because that whole book is about how they kind of do it in the shadows. But Elon Musk is just now like, fuck it. You know what? I bought the Twitter. I'm just part of the government now. I'm doing whatever I want. So they've really kind of like dispelled the entire shadow government thing. And it reminds me of like I feel like there's all these Illuminati people behind the scenes being like, you're making it too obvious. Stop, like he's exposing them. Like, no, come on. We got to do it secretly. But he just like doesn't get it because he's so stupid. Right. But I was gonna say, Dieter. I was curious about the whole like former conservatism thing because like I don't like to clock people like physiognomy or whatever the fuck, but like you have the conservative aesthetic, you got the hat, you got the beard, and in your videos you do like the suit. You're very stern and confident, and like liberals can be all of those things clearly if you're a liberal, progressive, whatever you want to call yourself. But you have the aesthetic of a conservative in the way that like the way they compose themselves. And I think that in the same way I promoted this other channel, Fireside Chats, he is a military personnel, and he has a Georgian, I guess that's not the right word, but a Southern accent, a Georgian Southern accent. And he has that conservative aesthetic. And I think that's really, really helpful right now, even though it is very superficial. Like that's not what you're known for.
Aesthetics matter, man.
It does matter. And in the same way, like I feel like me working out like helps my aesthetic because they're like, well, he's not a little soy boy, like he's got some muscles, like he's big, like clearly he knows something, even though that shouldn't matter at all for my opinion.
It does.
It matters. And I think you watching your videos and everyone in my chat, like please click the link in the description, go check them out. I think not only are they well thought out and you make good points, but that aesthetic will be really good in the coming years of trying to bring over the Republican sort of like, I'm not going to listen to anyone who has blue hair kind of narrative and say, well, this guy kind of looks like people that I listen to. And he's saying things that make sense. And yeah, it sucks that that's how we have to win people over, but I think it's really important.
Well, I worked in Hollywood for a while, and
Okay.
I've been studying media in college, and I'm 40, so I've been in this game, intellectually speaking, really since '92. I remember the Berlin Wall falling in '89, but thank you. I take pride in my aesthetic out of respect for my father, who I disagree with vehemently intellectually, but I respect the A+ job he did on providing. He did not parent that well. And actually, it's an interesting point. So, that show Succession?
I've heard of it.
Right?
I haven't seen it yet, yeah.
Oh, you haven't seen Succession?
No,
I highly recommend everyone see Succession for two reasons.
Really
one is to understand what I was talking about earlier, the sociopathy of the 0.001 percenters, the sociopathy of billionaires, but also more importantly, what the show is really about is what is it like to be in a family where you get money instead of love? Because that's very rare, especially like limitless money. Yeah. Right? Like they're always like, I've flown on private jets. I've had lobster. Like I've played golf at the best golf courses. Like it's not going to affect me if I ever get a hold of power because I've already had it. Like I'm immune to that shit because you know what I care about now with all this death in our world? I care about what people are going to say about me when I'm gone.
Yep.
I care about my legacy. I want people to say, hey, that white privileged motherfucker who could have gone out into the private sector and probably become a billionaire if he had just studied engineering in corporate America. I mean, I could have gone to Harvard Business School. It would have been so easy. I had a ridiculous job coming out of college. And I was just like, this is what I'm working for. This is what I worked so hard for. I mean, I worked my ass in college. Like, that's one thing I talk about with education. It doesn't matter just where you went to school. It matters like how well you did there or what's been your study regimen since you left school. So, I feel like I have a lot to teach the left about competition and conflict simply because of the way I was raised. Yeah. Because whether you like it or not, conservatives are superior political competitors.
Yeah, what's the classic The Simpsons where it's like, Republican convention, we're just plain evil, Democrat convention, we can't govern. Like, it's they're winning. They're winning hard and they know how to win in a lot of different ways. And they don't win every time, but like they have a lot of these. Their tendrils are stretched out, their connections are there, and they know what they're doing. And yeah, like your whole video on like Kamala is a loser. It's like, yeah, her and the Democratic Party, they really fumbled like very, very hard. And part of it you concede is, the country might not just be ready to accept a woman as a president. There's like a deep-rooted misogyny in this country, but that's absolutely not the only reason. They made a lot of missteps, and Republicans are getting really good at just consolidating, getting behind their candidate, and smashing him through. Like it's working.
Well, I forget the politician who said it, but there's a saying from a old school, veteran politician that said, Democrats fall in love, Republicans fall in line.
Yeah, literally.
They show up, man. And, you get into larger conversations about voting rights and how it's much more of a pain in the ass to vote in a urban or suburban area, those kinds of variables. But only people who are really politically savvy know about those things. And I'm after definition of terms in kind of I don't want to say street way, but it is kind of street. Like, what does a loser really mean? Right? What does that really mean? Because I say in the video, I'm always reluctant to call somebody a loser because I've lost plenty in my life. Everybody has. But I learned from those losses so I could become a better competitor. The word winner is just another word for good competitor, right? Yeah. Like we've got to get into the details of our language so that we can reestablish a culture, so that we can establish for the first time ever a culture of progressive winning. For example, the symbol of the progressive political faction in this country is a peace dove. Nope.
No more peace.
Yeah. No more peace doves.
We're dark woke now.
No, it's like, we talk a little bit about, and I mentioned it on the Dieter is Burning episode, where athletes use their anger to produce quality performance. They use their anger to hustle. And lefties, for a variety of reasons, do not deal well with their anger. Maybe they meditate, maybe they exercise, whatever. But for political purposes, they're always like, oh, let's get along. You know, I mean, talk about Kamala's campaign. The theme of her campaign following the convention was bipartisanship. People don't want bipartisanship anymore. I want the politics of dominance. I want to not just beat the enemy. I want to make them regret showing up for the fight. That's the way I approach competition.
I talked about this with JJ McCullough, and it's so true what you're saying, because you look at like when we were polling the best during that campaign, and it wasn't when we got Dick Cheney up on and said, look, we're friends with Republicans, and it wasn't when we talked about how we're going to do the same thing that Trump was going to do, or like, hey, we'll do that too. It was when we were like, hey, look at these weird idiots and they suck and we hate them. And like, you can say that's not built on a platform, because it's not that much. Like, you can attach policies to that rhetoric, but that's what worked. That was playing the Trump game. That's why he does so well, is because he's like, hey, I'm making you all feel good for shitting on the people you don't like. And they tried that for a week. It worked really well. And they said, let's never do that again. And they kind of just petered out and lost. And I agree. Like, I don't like the idea of dominance and it almost evokes feelings of violence. And I don't want to go there, but there is something to be said about kind of dominating the conversation, humiliating your enemies. And while I don't advocate for that in like the one-on-one conversations where I'm trying to maybe like bring someone over to my side, which I do think is really important, when I'm on the debate stage with a Trump pundit or a someone defending what's happening right now, I absolutely want to make them look stupid. I absolutely want to grind them into the dust and say, like, nothing you say makes any sense. Look how dumb you are, and I'm going to humiliate you. Yeah, because people are watching, and especially Trump supporters, people on the right respond to the politics of humiliation. It's like, well, if my guy looks dumb, I don't want him to be my guy, so I have to be the better guy. Which, again, I regret that is how that works. It should not be. I want to live in a world where the nerdiest egghead,
the
most
best
boring
argument
person ever, goes up and is just like, well, this is how the economy works. And then everyone's like, well, he's better. Doesn't matter. But unfortunately, calling people nicknames and exposing how dumb they are, we have to do it better than the Trump crowd is doing it, not just by being more charismatic, but also by using actual facts and stories to back up our narratives. Because if we just start making stuff up, it's going to be a race to the bottom, crabs in a bucket sort of situation. So
I would add to that the use of creativity as well, and for example, and specificity. Those are the two words that come to mind with how to improve messaging: is creativity and specificity. For example, addition by subtraction is a concept that I think people are becoming more aware of. There's that saying in business, if you want to get a deal done, get the lawyers out of the room. Well, in politics, if you want to get a good deal done that actually makes a big difference in Americans' lives, you got to get two types of people out of the room: the Confederate flag-waving, Bible-beating gun nuts, also known as MAGA, and then the heartless one percenters. You get those people out of the room. Everybody else, the solutions will not be perfect, but they will be a hell of a lot better than they would be otherwise.
So do you not think that people like to point out like a George Soros is like, okay, he's this billionaire and he funds progressive politics. Would you say kick that guy out of the room, even though he is funding the causes that you believe in? Because I wouldn't want that person to be gone. I think that's a useful asset.
If you had a personality like me that was not intimidated by privilege on that level, then yes. But they are there to serve the public and serve the cause. This is not about their grandchildren saying, oh, my grandfather was the godfather of the modern day Democratic Party. No, bullshit. And by the way, your money probably does a lot more for the party on a state level.
Yeah. Like I said, like when you're funding these smaller candidates and you're not like giving $100 million to the Kamala campaign, which goes to what, I don't know, Megan Thee Stallion appearances. Like, is that really what we need right now? I don't know how many people that swayed, but
I approach it like you mentioned. I think in the how to talk to Trump supporters video, to where the taxes should be so high that billionaires don't even exist in the first place. Like that kind of unchecked power, that kind of unfounded, unprecedented amount of influence and power, just based on the wealth that you have. You're literally you can buy entire campaigns. You can get whoever you want in the office. You can influence whoever you want. You can buy entire social media platforms, and literally just shape society how you want to.
I do want to push back a little bit on that, just because I don't necessarily disagree with the fact that I don't think we shouldn't be at the whims of these people's goodwill or bad will. I don't want, like, it's great that Bill Gates does all this great stuff with his money. It's great that George Soros donates to causes that I believe in.
Right.
But at the same time, you got Elon on the other side, and it's like, yeah, you're right. We shouldn't have this scenario where I have to just pray and hope the person with that much money is going to make the right decision. But when you say that they can kind of just elect anyone they want, I would say that you look at this election, and there are billionaires on both sides of this equation. And yes, there is an undue amount of power that I want checked, but you can't just buy the presidency. There's a lot of factors going in, and so I don't like when
they outraised her 3-1. She outraised Kamala outraised Trump 3-1.
That's what I'm saying. It's like the more money went into the Hillary campaign, more money went into the Kamala campaign, but they didn't win. It depends on where that goes. So it's not just money.
Yeah, and that's that. And so it really does come back to marketing, and that's actually a big reason why this show exists. Like me and Dieter got together a year ago and created the Left Coast. Still working on an opening title, and eventually a theme song.
Yeah, we need theme music. We really do need theme music.
I've got something in the works, and I think I might get like an actual like voice actor involved and whatnot. But we do need to actually like create a logo and all that. I digress.
I do voice acting if you want to.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I do. I do voiceovers work as well.
Hell yeah. So a big thing about this show, a big theme of it is marketing. It's amplifying our message or messages from not only like a progressive standpoint, but in the way that actually resonates with as many people as possible, like the lowest common denominator, like as like whether it's Democratic blue dog liberals or working class MAGA, because ultimately like the it is between the working class and the ultra rich, the super powerful, the ones that control all the strings of power. And there's more of us than we are them, and all those tropes.
Yeah, so there's defining terms. There's 3 legs to the stool of American politics. There's policy, which we all love. Lefties love. The progressives are the most politically savvy people in the United States because we know policy. And then there's politics, which is what the elected officials actually do. And then there's political marketing, which is the salesmanship of the policy by the elected officials.
And like, that's if you had that in a pie chart, unfortunately, I feel like that last one is like more than
the biggest
of it. Yeah. Which is crazy, because it's like I have the policy that's like give everyone, healthcare, and puppies have birthday parties every day, and then the other guy has like let's torture dogs on a regular basis. But I said it in a really fun way, so I win. Like
no, for real.
And looks matter, like we were talking about earlier. Looks matter, aesthetics matter, what someone's wearing matters. Like, and the demand, if you're not a straight white man, is really high to be perfect.
No, it reminds me of a meme I saw years and years ago. It's between like this typical college like communist radical just like screaming and just freaking the fuck out on one side, and then it's just Hitler in the other corner, just looking as calm and reasonable and like as possible. And this communist is like, you want to kill so many people, you want to gas the Jews, you want to do all these normal things, and the Hitler's just responding like, I forget exactly what he said, but that calm demeanor, like it's like
he never had a drink in his life. He never had a drink in his life, and he was a vegetarian. Like there's the 3 leaders or
he did
whatever.
Do a lot of meth and shook around a lot, so he wasn't exactly the most.
Yeah, he was on a lot of drugs. He was on a lot of drugs at the end. Yeah, one of their piece of their success was the Adderall. Going through the forest and
so we actually watched a clip, I think on our stream earlier this week of a TikTok of this guy. who talked about how it's just the obsession with the Democratic Party of like BuzzFeed politics and HuffPost politics that centered around identity as if it's like the super special thing that they just harp away at. It's like identity politics are not going to win you elections. Like there's a one size fits all. There are one size fits all solutions to a lot of the problems that everyday Americans are facing, no matter what background you are, how you
Right.
identify, or what race or sex you are. This obsession with it does come back to a marketing thing, because if you come across as, you know, this is too offensive, or I identify as this, it's just like you just turn people off. Like,
it
Yeah,
also
and
softens the recruiting process
That's-
too,
that's
because
exactly it.
you're not prioritizing personality type,
Or the
and that's my
message.
whole argument. That's my crusade right now. Is I love diversity, socioeconomic, ethnic, whatever. We will get diversity naturally. Except
Yes,
I
of
want
course.
one thing from all the next generation of political figures. I want them to be competitors first. Now, AOC is a good example of someone who I don't think was a like naturally competitive person, but she's becoming a really great competitor. And she, you know, we've talked about her. She's made some mistakes in the past, but I mean, she's a start. We got to build on something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she's doing an amazing job where she comes in as like a Bernie-esque figure that I think, you know, if you can criticize Bernie one thing as a Bernie supporter, it's that has trouble working within the system because he's very radical. He has very radical ideas. And AOC, people give her shit for this, but she's coalescing in a way that, you know, people say, oh, you're becoming, you know, de-radicalized. You're not going to give us what I want. But she knows how to play the game. She's like working within the system in a way that I think is very, very helpful. And she still has bite. You know, she still has the, hey, you're saying the things that no one else is saying that I need people to say. I need you to go out there and be like, hey, this is bullshit, and I'm going to call it bullshit, and I'm going to say it's bullshit in front of a million people on the Senate floor or the House floor, and that's just so sorely missing. And I think that's something that kind of I saw permeate through your content, Dieter, which
Right.
was like, hey, let's play fucking hardball. Like, let's stop being like, oh, you can't do that. Like, oh, you can't say that. It's like, no, say what's real. Say what needs to happen. And you know, sometimes you do have to make concessions, but don't just
For
give
real.
that all up for, I don't know, like this weird ideological purity test. Don't give that up for like, oh, well, he didn't, you know, say his pronouns at the beginning, so like he doesn't meet this certain criteria. We're just going to dismiss what they say. It's like,
and that's
yeah.
why I don't have a problem with Pete Buttigieg going to Michigan and becoming a senator, because if someone like the type of person that I want steps up and becomes the next great lefty leader, Pete's going to fall in line. Pete's going to serve that message because that's where the winds blow. Like, I know guys like that, dude. McKinsey, I was at Monitor Group, which was one of the top 5 management consulting firms in the world at the time. They actually, you know why they went under, my old consulting firm? Because they were the consulting firm for Gaddafi. And then when Gaddafi,
like
when
the head
the
of
Gaddafi
Libya,
coup happened,
Gaddafi?
yeah, they were
so
the
you,
prime. I never worked on a case. Never worked on a case for Libya, but a lot of people I know did. They would have Michael Porter, who's a very famous intellectual in the business world, give the Gaddafi's kid like private tutoring sessions on his applications to Harvard Business School. It was ridiculous. Yeah. So I know the McKinsey
how was that?
types.
How can you tell me more about that experience? Like knowing that you were in that, but you weren't contributing. Like, how did that make you feel? Because like I just for context, I graduated in aerospace. And almost all the jobs for aerospace engineers, especially in San Diego where I was, are in defense. And I felt this like moral, ethical qualm of like, I don't want to go work for Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, and like
General Dynamics.
Yeah, General Dynamics or Atomics, and make bombs and make you know like drones, and like I don't want to be a part of this, even if I'm not, you know, maybe I'm just a test engineer, maybe I'm not like designing them, maybe I'm not the one dropping them, but like I'm part of that system, so I like had to move away from that. So I never was actually in that. How is that for you? Like, yeah, you said it's empty. Like, what was that like? Did you know what was happening? Like, how did you fight back against it? Or, you know?
Yeah. So my initial reaction was, wow, I'm getting paid really well, and I'm not a banker. I don't have to do the banking hours. I'm working with the C-suite executives, but I don't need to like grind on weekends like the bankers do. There's still a lot of work. Management consulting was a very serious business back in the early 2000s, all the way from really the 70s, 80s, and 90s. but it's basically just PowerPoint presentations and Excel spreadsheets.
Yep.
And that's not very fulfilling. I felt purposeless is the word that comes to mind to describe what it felt like to go to work every day.
Yeah.
And also they didn't value me. Like I went to Vanderbilt, which is a damn good school, but it's not Harvard and it's not Princeton and it's not Yale. And these people from like UPenn that summer interned the year before we started, they would get all these great cases. And I knew I was in trouble when they gave a case on NBC News to my office mate who was an engineer. And I said, why are you not giving me this case? I know more about media than anyone else in this building. Like, does anyone know who Marshall McLuhan is? I mean, no. So then once they did that, about probably 3 months after that, I quit. I just said, you guys suck. And it's also very conflict avoidant, and I enjoy conflict because of the way I was, because of the house that I was raised in. It was just, there was a lot of yelling and it was, it was defined by competition. I talk about competition. I know as much as I do about competition, not because I'm such an amazing competitor. It's because I downloaded everything from my parents and from the sports team cultures that I participated in, and my abusive oldest brother who used to beat the shit out of me and call me stupid. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to hit the book so no one can call me stupid. And byproduct of that was that I ended up, becoming pretty aware. I did my research and I learned about guys like George Wallace and Barry Goldwater, and saw that Reagan was only the start of a devolution of the intellectual propositions of conservatism. I talk about how Trump isn't Reagan. He's Reagan on cocaine. He's Barry Goldwater. He's George Wallace, a modern day version of those characters. This is white supremacy. I studied lynching in college, and I see no difference from what I call it empathetic arithmetic, the experience, the entertainment experience of watching a black man hang from a tree. I see very little difference, except for maybe scale, in that than seeing the immigrants get torn from their homes and their families.
Oh yeah, like it's not just like well, this is bad, but this needs to happen. Like people are relishing in it. It's like, oh boy, like I'm watching someone cry and think, oh yeah, that fills me with joy.
Yeah,
it's disgusting. It's ghoulish, and like
on a mass scale,
And like I remember, like the worst I think I've ever done of that is like, when Trump lost in 2020 and like people cried about it, like it did feel a little vindicating, like haha, like you made fun of us for 4 years. But I wasn't laughing because their misery was something that I thought was going to actually hurt them. I was like laughing because like, oh haha, like but honestly I think your life will be marginally improved or not marginally but like significantly improved by the policies that are going to be passed. COVID was happening, so maybe that didn't pan out as good as everyone wanted it to, but they're not laughing because of like a little haha humiliation. It's, oh, your life is demonstrably worse, you're getting ejected from a country, like you're it's like literally not just schadenfreude, it is I am like, I hate using the word evil because it attaches this kind of like inheritance to it, but like it really does feel like to a degree evil, like the relishment,
I think
enjoyment they get.
Yeah,
it is, but like at the same time, I don't like calling Republicans in general evil because I know these people. I'm friends with some of these people, and I know why they think that. I have a couple MAGA friends, and it's hard, and I'm trying to like de-radicalize and convert them. But the way that I see it happening is like this deep a bubble of misinformation, this lack of empathy because of lack of connection. And I've seen these people change their mind by connecting with the people that they see hurt. But because they're so disconnected from it, it's not this like, oh, like I'm hurting someone. It's, oh, this is the bad, and I'm getting the bad out, and it's like really as simple as that for them.
It really is like it really is like these people are stuck in an information silo, like a grain silo. If you get caught in one of those, you're sinking, and it's like almost impossible to get out. And then all of a sudden you get crushed by
the more you move, the more you sink. Right?
That's really. Yeah, it would describe a lot of these people who get like go down these rabbit holes, and it's hard to get them out because like they're just so entangled in this fractal wrongness, these layers of misinformation, disinformation.
And I would separate them too, like because there are people that like they know like especially the pundits, like the
sure.
Matt Walshes, like those sorts of people, like, oh, you do have full context for this. You fully understand what is happening. You fully understand the consequences. You've seen how bad this is for people, and you still support it. You're pretty evil. Like you're actually
that's
just
evil,
a bad
That's
person.
sociopath.
Versus,
That's
like,
sociopath.
It really is.
The same people that get swept up in that, and it's like, well, in their eyes, every single one of these people getting deported is this violent, awful murderer, and I just want violent, awful murderers out. And it's like, I'm just happy that's happening. Like, isn't that good? Yeah, they're misled. Yeah, they're supporting things that are causing significant harm to people that I care about. But at the same time, it's like, I know that when I can show them the error of their ways, it may be a little naive because it doesn't always work. Don't get me wrong, but like,
No,
you really
course.
can pull these people out of it by showing. And like, I know so many people.
As long as they're not boomers, you have a chance. If they're boomers, they're
yeah.
gone.
For those people, you just kind of have to wait out the clock because they're a little dug in. But
no,
but even then,
little.
I mean, my dad, I guess, is a boomer. He might be watching this right now. Hi, Dad, I love you. He grew up a Reagan voter, like a 2-time Reagan voter, and he was like deep in the like Republican rhetoric. And he is now like the libest lib, like he's like a resistance lib, and that was not due to like an education thing. Like he went to college, he got good grades, he became like he's like a lawyer and a scientist. He's a really smart guy. But he just had to see like practically when he experienced the way the world worked, like, oh, like this just doesn't pan out. Like the things that I've been told are not being demonstrated in real life. And it's like you said, like not only are you in this information silo, but like sometimes you really just don't see these things happening. Like especially you see the support for deportations or the anti-immigration rhetoric, and it's in all these like cities on like the northern part of the United States that have like no Mexican people at all. And
it's hard to really like cut through with a lot of these people because like ultimately people who do consume a lot of this conservative media and who do end up voting Republican, they don't even, a lot of the time they don't even want to bother seeing the other perspective. And like a big thing is like us on the left, like regardless of who you are, like we still want you to have good education, we still want you to have health care. It's like the Bernie Sanders campaign, it's like, you know, you may disagree with us, but like we still want to provide for you, we still want to like give you all this
we want to elevate everyone. It's not like a partisan game.
Like the U.S. should be catching up to all these other countries that have provided for their citizens in terms of healthcare and economic benefits and whatnot. Like my favorite, one of our favorite chatters, who's in my chat right now, Megan, a good friend of mine. Me and her have such a different perspective on all these political things. So she considers herself a libertarian. She's definitely right wing. I consider myself a socialist. But even though we have like just major disagreements and we don't see eye to eye on a lot of like things politically related, when we clash, because we talk all the time, when we disagree, it doesn't come from a place of hatred or spite or negativity. And I think that is abundant, especially in these more far right wing circles. You see it all the time on Twitter. You see it in MAGA circles. It really is a lot of like sociopathy, like we talked about Matt Walsh and like his ilk. So there is definitely room to reach a lot of these people and actually like come to a middle ground, because me and Megan then ultimately end up on a lot of things, especially in terms of end goals, but like how we get to those end goals may differ. Speaking of which, she because we were talking earlier about purity testing for Democrats and liberals in general. She says anti-purity tests leftism, that would be a big challenge to face, and I don't disagree at all.
That's why my messaging is oriented not so much towards policy, because the policies should just be Bernie 2.0. It should just be an improvement on what Bernie's platform was. So, for example, it's not Medicare for all anymore. It's Medicare for all or something better, because I got news for you. Doctors aren't a huge fan of Medicare. Not all of them. Yeah. So I'm advocating more for a change in the way that we approach political competition. I mean, and the easiest way to change the culture of an institution is to change its leadership. So I'm trying to rally people in the next in the midterms and the election after that in 28 and all the elections after that. I want progressive competitors to be trying to primary DNC neoliberal incrementalists, and because 80% of the country wants transformational change.
Yeah.
So you know the whole
hard
like
to get them to all be on the same page of what that change
Not-
looks
not
like. 'Cause
only-
you see,
remember
like, the
remember so
Medicare for
remember
All
about
poll, right? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
yeah 65%. It was at 70%. Now it's at like 65%.
But it also
But
depends
you-
on how they ask the question, and like if you ask it a
Yes.
different way, the support time how to drop. So it's like, first of all, not everyone knows what that entails, and even Bernie, I would say, is pretty radical. I mean, he's more radical than a lot of European countries, and this is something I don't agree with him on. He wants to abolish private healthcare, and I don't necessarily agree with that. I think private healthcare can be a good option. I like obviously a public option. I like having everyone guaranteed that backstop that they can always go to the hospital. But at least when I lived in Germany and I experienced this, people who want to opt out of that and not pay the taxes and go pay extra for better care for private stuff, I think that's fine as long as that doesn't undermine the public option. I'm fine with that, and he seems to be against
Right.
that. So, like, if you phrase it, "I'm going to take away your private healthcare," a lot of people are no longer on board. So,
No,
I think
yeah.
it is a branding problem.
So that
It's
gets
right.
down to the psychological thing that I talk about in my essays. Conservatives are more afraid of losing what they have as opposed to risking that to get more,
Yes.
to get better. They don't believe in the system. I mean, Reagan government is the problem was the beginning of the end.
Yes.
Like, because FDR proved him wrong. Why did no one say, did no one step up and say, oh yeah? How about that guy who got elected 4 times to the presidency and completely transformed this nation into a modern society?
yeah.
Our
yeah.
military, our
Yeah.
infrastructure, our social services, everything got better.
Well, to be fair, I think Jimmy
Except
Carter.
for Okinawa. of
And I'm
course.
not like a historian. I think Jimmy Carter would have aligned a lot with FDR policies, and he did get elected once, but people just kind of hated it, and that might have been a rhetoric thing because he was like he's seen a little weak, but like,
Well, he also got hijacked by that hostage crisis. Don't
yes,
forget.
that's true.
That's
That
what I'm kinda
medium
saying,
that's a Marshall McLuhan medium is the message moment because the media fed off of that crisis
Yeah.
and it made that softy. I mean, let's be serious, like Jimmy Carter, right? I asked this to StatPad. This is a branding exercise. Is Jimmy Carter the candidate or is Jimmy Carter the guy who works for the candidate? Like Hillary Clinton. Is Hillary Clinton the candidate? Really, be really honest with yourself.
Yeah.
Is she the candidate or is she working for the candidate?
Yeah.
She's working for the candidate. She's not a real candidate.
So you're saying
not
that in the
management
way
material.
that like the people
Marketing.
are like
Casting.
kinda going through her, like the Wall Street people, the
Bingo.
big business people.
So
Okay,
that's the
I
way
see.
you look at it. No. So
No,
that's
I'm
the way
asking
you
if
look.
that's what you're saying.
Right.
I'm not
so
sure.
so intellectual. So this is intellectual versus emotional.
Mm-hmm.
Intellectual, yes, that's absolutely true for people who do their homework. But I'm talking about a casting decision. Just the ethos of the person. Does that person, the way they communicate with you, does that give you hope that they will finally deliver?
Okay,
Because
so
if
you're
you
just
want
saying
to
charismatically, rhetorically, do they even match up? Like
Right.
with what people want? And the answer, I guess, with Hillary's obviously no. Yeah, like that.
No.
They just found
and
her
that's the
crazy.
reputation of the Democratic Party is Democrats don't deliver. Obama was the shining example of over-promising and under-delivering. His
Mhm.
attitude towards why he didn't go for universal health care, because he kind of wanted to when he had all that political capital when he first came into office, was the country's not ready for it.
Mhm.
Yeah, you know what a competitor does in that situation? He makes the country ready for it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, he might not
makes
have
the
wanted it,
country-
to be fair. I mean, he did do Obamacare, which was a step in the right direction for sure.
Yeah, but
did not go
Lieberman
nearly far.
castrated it.
Yeah.
And we got it castrated. And I mean, it's funny too because it was a kind of a mimicking of the Mitt Romney plan, which was a Republican.
Yes,
idea.
Romney Care.
From,
Came out of
absolutely, from the
Massachusetts.
Yeah, but-
Heritage Foundation. Yeah.
Well, which really
Yes.
does prove that. I mean, you look at like the comparison between support for Obamacare versus support for Affordable Care Act, and how many more people will start supporting it once you don't call it Obama. It really is just a vibes based, like, naming thing. I want to float this idea. So one of my chatters said this, not just now, but recently, and it's stupid, but it's so funny. He said we should rename clean energy to white power to get the right wingers on board. And I think that's so funny because I unironically think it might work for some people, but it's
White
obviously-
power, clean, righteous,
Green
ordained
energy?
by God.
No, white power. Oh my
Yeah.
god.
I
Powered by
scrapped
God.
a video on this, but there really are just so many things of like if we just call them something else, like people will be totally on board with them. And you look at that, like unfortunately there is that kind of horseshoe theory overlap between Bernie voters and Trump voters because of the populist horseshoe stuff. But like the things that Trump is promising, and it sucks because Trump's not being genuine, and he's just kind of like, people just project what they want to hear from him. But what he says sounds very similar to what a Bernie says, where it's like, I want everyone to have health care, I want to lift up the average American, and then he gets in office and those policies don't pan out. But that messaging is working. That's what people hear. The workers hear that and they're like, oh, he's going to fight for me. Oh, he's not putting tax on tips. That's great, even though that's going to make like almost no difference to most people. They hear that that's great. Oh, he's going to lower prices for me. Oh, he's going to do this. And it's like, okay, well, here's the guy who's saying that, and he's also going to do it, like a Bernie Sanders type person. But it's clear that messaging works. That's resonating, and populism's on the rise. And as much as I don't like brain rot populism, we do need that. We need that hard hitting repetition. And Bernie's the king of this. How many times? 99, 1%, 99. Like, yeah, he said 100 million times.
Millionaires and the billionaires.
Yeah, it's grained into our heads. Who the fuck? Name one thing Martin O'Malley ever said. I don't fucking know.
No, repetition's important. That's what branding. That's what branding is repetition and reputation. That's what branding is. It's the repeated thoughts that come to mind when someone looks at something, hears something, or otherwise consumes it intellectually.
Yeah.
And then it becomes emotional.
Yeah.
So can you then, let's just refocus this. Can you tell me what your goal is, like with your channel? Like what I'm trying to do is like, obviously I'm just making stuff I find entertaining in some part, but like after seeing what's been happening in the past 4 weeks, I've been very, very motivated to make more stuff, pushing back on that. Like I do try to have that rhetoric of like, hey, I'm a little more reasonable, I'm not going crazy, and I'm trying to pull you back onto the left side of things. But I still am feeling a little lost on how to politically actually help. I can donate to a charity, I can donate to a campaign, maybe I'll go door knock during an election. What is your like concrete like goal forward with your content, and maybe how you're planning on changing local politics, bigger politics?
So my theory is that it's not the ideas that it's the problem, it's the people. And we need new people in the DNC. I do still have hope. There's a lot of doomerism on the left about the DNC. I get it, but they haven't met me yet, and they haven't seen what an aggressive progressive is capable of. I think because of
I
my
like that. That sounds like a wrestler nickname, the aggressive progressive.
Yeah, it's actually Jimmy Dore had a show on PYT called that.
But
no, I don't like it.
So otherwise I would have used it. Otherwise I would have used. I originally called my second episode the aggressive progressive, but then once I found that out, I changed it.
Right. Yeah. Fuck them. Yeah.
But so a new type of lefty leader. I don't care what you look like, but I do care what you sound like. You better sound like a competitor. You better be pissed off. The value proposition emotionally, in terms of the theatricality of politics, is not so different from Jesus, where Jesus says, give me your sin and I'll take it on so you don't have to carry it. The politicians of the next generation of lefty leaders should say, give me your anger. Give me your rage. It's okay. Anger is a completely natural response to unfairness, injustice, inequality, just getting fucked over by the system. Completely natural. It's what you do with it. Is you're going to eat away at you if you just let it sit there? Or are you going to go work out and then make a couple phone calls for a candidate, or go to a DSA meeting? You know what I mean? And establishing these networks and relationships with people that have shared empathetic worldviews. We're not going to agree on everything with policy. And by the way, I think Bernie might feel that way about private insurance because of pharmaceuticals, because of prescriptions. Because if you didn't have private health insurance, then they wouldn't cover the really expensive new drugs, the brand name new drugs or whatever. But in terms of what my advocacy is after this election loss, is almost exclusively on focused on transforming the DNC from a party of losers to a party of winners. This new guy, Ken Martin, is a centrist pussy who does not know the first thing about how to transform anger into political productivity. Maybe he will surprise me. Maybe he will cast people in those roles, because you could have a nice guy in that role because he's not a candidate. But I am not encouraged when I see his victory speech, and then I see his first major interview with Brian Tyler Cohen, and he doesn't mention one word about policy. Not one goddamn word about
What did
policy.
He talk about?
He talked about tactics and strategy for campaigning. Oh, we need to go on these YouTube channels. We need to go on these podcasts. And
it doesn't matter if you don't have anything to say.
If your message sucks, like, you can be a right winger. This is what I'm talking about earlier about Democrats fall in love, Republicans fall in line. You can be a right winger, and the politician's just going to say, I'm not having transgender women or transgender men play in women's sports, whatever. and that's enough for them. I'm not the other guy. That's enough for a Republican to show up. For Democrats, you have to offer something, and that's what the lesson was
as
in
many
2016.
trans women in sports, double them, triple them, even more trans women in sports. Fill the sports. No more women's sports.
But I do believe that the answer to scapegoat politics in this country, I wish it weren't this way. This is the difference between seeing the world the way you want to and actually accepting the ugly truths of the world that we live in. Right? I wish we lived in an educated society where people had critical thinking skills and did their own homework, and the best arguments would actually win. I think that world can exist in America, but the barriers of white trash ignorance need to be broken down by progressive, righteous rage. And that has to be carried by people like me or people whose psychographic profiles I like. Usually, honestly, it does come from people who grow up playing sports. Like it really, if they didn't have that life experience of getting pissed off and like something good coming from it, then they don't believe in it. They don't have that conviction. And, you know, I would say to what Stat Pat was saying earlier about how, you know, these conservatives, they're being fed what they want to hear, not what they need to hear, and so forth. You got to get down to the specificity, right? Anti-Trump Republican soy might be intellectually accessible for you because they already hate Trump. And I theorize two things. If you voted for Trump 3 times, you're a TFG, as Kyle Kalinske says. You're too far gone. Can't get to you. If you didn't have, you had 3 chances to get it right and you got it wrong every time, that's psychosis. And you're older, so you're probably intellectually less accessible. Young people are more open-minded. And that's why I have hope for Gen Z and millennials uniting to create this political wave of transformational change in the leadership ranks.
I don't know if I agree with that necessarily, because like I understand that they're too far gone in the sense like, if I'm and I've talked to a lot of Trump people now. If you talk to these people one-on-one, it's like no matter how reasonable you are, no matter how many facts you bring to the table, it's very difficult to break them out of what they already have tripled down on, as you say. That said, I think something that just happened recently that kind of maybe speaks against that is the whole Luigi Mangione situation, where you have MAGA people saying, wow, like this guy channeled my rage. And obviously that's not what I'm advocating for everyone to go out and do shit like that. But like, obviously there is this kind of opportunity to bridge a gap through rage channeling with people who are really fed up with whether it be the healthcare system, whether it be just politics in general, the economy, how corrupt things are. That opportunity to bring those people over is there, and Trump is capitalizing on that, and he's scapegoating immigrants and trans people, and it's awful and disgusting. But I think there is something, or someone like you or any other progressive politician can channel that rage and bring those people over. It's just hard to address them specifically. You just have to have an encompassing enough message that speaks against the things that most people are frustrated about, which apparently is healthcare, to bring them over. I think that can really work.
So the culture war fight, that the counterattack, to get specific with what you're talking about, because the psychographics are there for the type of people that are intellectually accessible that you're talking about. They are approachable, but they got to get rid of the MAGA hat. They got to get rid of the Confederate flag. They got to put the Bible down, and they can't be a gun nut. If they're a responsible gun owner, or if they're a single use gun owner, a home protection gun owner, whatever, they are accessible. Because if you're, my whole theory, we can talk about guns for a second because it's a beautiful little nutshell, is like the intellectualism of it is, if you are a responsible gun owner, you should have no problem with stricter gun laws because they won't apply to you.
For the most
They're
part,
for the psychos.
Yeah.
And you know, if you're a responsible gun owner, you know that maybe not at your local gun range, maybe not in your neighborhood, maybe not even in your county, there might not be a psycho gun nut that wants to go shoot up a school. But you know it's just a matter of time before it happens again.
It's one bad day sort of situation, and that's why, like, but I think the Democrats are poison for gun rhetoric because some of them don't know what they're talking about, and they don't know enough to be able to advocate for common sense, which is a misnomer. Like, there are lots of common sense policies that could be advocated for that I support. The Democrats aren't going to support because they don't understand how they work. They aren't gun owners themselves most of the time. But yeah, like when people are like, "Hey, we're gonna say you have to lock your gun up at home in a gun safe," I'm like, okay, but whatever, like I don't mind, that's fine, like I'll do that. Like and people freak out about that, like, oh, like you know, this is draconian, this is a violation of the Second Amendment. It's like, what, to just keep it out of reach of your children, like to make sure accidents don't happen, like that's draconian. But I mean, and people, the gun nut, when you say nut, I think that evokes you know, I think someone can have 20, 30, 40 firearms and not be a gun nut. A gun nut is someone who's like so staunchly pro Second Amendment that even the smallest infraction on the fact that they can go to Walmart and buy a shopping cart full of shotguns is somehow the most evil, tyrannical thing ever, when with even all of the things in California that I don't like. I mean, they have like background checks on ammo. I don't like the 10-round magazine stuff, but like whatever, like I still have firearms and they're still fun and I can still do everything I want them to. And even the people who are like, if the government comes after me, like you'll still have a gun. You can still have it. You just maybe have to wait a couple days more. And I think it's insane that like that can't somehow be like that can't, what do I want to say? It doesn't permeate through the Democratic messaging because they just like, let's ban everything. And it's like, all right, like,
well, that's how it comes across. I mean, that's how it comes across. But Kamala was talking about how she owns a Glock, and like, I mean, you know what I mean? It's like there's
plenty of like there's plenty of rhetoric coming from the Democrats trying to appeal to Republicans, and there's an abundance of it, and it just didn't pay off at all. Like whether it was about gun rights or the border, just fear mongering about immigration, like just try to be original about these things. Like try to meet people where they are instead of trying to like copy the Republicans, because they're not going to vote for you if you're just like going to be like Republican light. They're just going to vote for the fucking real thing.
Yeah, and you look at the opportunities that I think Democrats have. It's hard for me to say they squandered them because Republicans stonewall so much. But a Sandy Hook happens, a Uvalde happens, and like everyone watches the footage from these, and it's like, this is unacceptable. This should never happen. How do we stop this? And the Democrat is like, ban every AR-15, and it's like, okay, well then they just get a different kind of firearm, or then they do it some other way. Like in my head, I'm like, there's no real difference between the way that gun functions and any other gun that you could do the same thing with functions. That's not a message that resonates with anyone but people who don't know anything about firearms. So all the people that you could win over from the Republican side who are really mad at what's happening, they're mad at the police response, they're mad that like this person was able to get a gun, they're not going to come over because it's like, well, you don't know what you're talking about. And I think that is them kind of fumbling. That said, even though they try to pass better background checks, Republicans are just gonna be like, no, nothing is okay, we're going to stop it. Like the fact that you even tried to suggest anything after all these 12-year-olds got shot, you're an evil person, you're trying to take away my gun. So it's not their fault, but I think there's a lot of missed opportunity there for sure.
I got a creative solution to the gun problem that I can't get into for details, but it involves the local police force having a relationship with the gun owner and actually like getting free ammunition. They go in once a year, and
I'm putting myself in the schizo shoes, and I'm already like, you want them to know?
No, but there's an incentive. There's an incentive to do it. There's motivation. There's a selling point that I won't get into, but they love cops. For a lot of those guys love cops. They might not love the government. It's funny how they hate the government, but they love our military and they love the uniform
for sure. Because it's like, oh, I love the cops. I love the law enforcement. And by the way, if any of them knocked on my door and tried to confiscate my gun, you would, I'd go out guns a-blazing or whatever. So it's this weird kind of clashing thing where they hate authority.
Like, well, that's part of the
enforced it. Yeah, like fucking the boys in blue, the military is just like an arm of the state. So it's like, do you support? Are you going to support?
But it's even simpler than
down or what?
It's even simpler than that. Just go to superficial reasoning, because that's what conservatism is. It's, if you've watched one of my earlier episodes, it's the three false gods. It's a Dieter trichotomy. The three false gods of conservative citizenry: the framers and the Constitution. Anything having to do with the framers and Constitution might as well be the word of God to these people.
Yeah.
And then the unregulated free market,
unless it's the 14th Amendment, right? Yeah,
Then there's the unregulated free market. They think all regulations are stupid or just in the way. Mm-hmm. And then there's the uniform. Like you're talking about the uniform. Anybody in a uniform to them is like a god. And this is where I'm talking about with like separate targeting, right? I talk in the Kamala. What are we going to learn from this election loss? Because winners don't just win all the time. They learn from their losses. So one of the things I think we need to learn is targeting. Who do we actually go after? And I think anybody that is willing to get rid of the MAGA paraphernalia, doesn't think that the Confederate flag is an American symbol because it's an anti-American symbol,
Literally
doesn't take all of their existential information out of the New Testament or the Bible in general. They can actually express their views in secular language. And then that they're not paranoid gun owners, right? Gun nuts, like that. That's kind of superlative. As long as they don't have those things going on, I think they can be reached. That's the good news. The bad news is that those people that I just described, the Confederate flag waving, Bible beating gun nuts, at least 2/3 of GOP voters fall into that category. I know that's hard to believe, but it's 2/3.
That is hard to believe, but if you're right, that's a significant amount of them can be reached. And also, I think a lot of non-voters who are turned off.
That's exactly where I was going to go. Is it's all? I mean, presidential politics. It's all about turnout. I mean, Biden got 6.3 million more votes in 2020 than Kamala did in 2024. That determined the outcome of the election. Progressives stayed home. Bernie's coalition stayed home, and for a reason that I did not fully appreciate until research came out on it, because of Israel Gaza. Now, I got some good news for you, because crisis is a opportunity, among other things. But I believe that the younger generation in Gen Z, they are so tech oriented. I won't say tech savvy, because I think it does manipulate them, but I'm not a psychologist, so I don't want to speculate. But these Gen Z guys that we did from this thing called the Gen Z podcast, I'm actually going down to LA to do an episode with them next week.
Okay.
They knew, without us having to tell them anything, that Israel Gaza was and is a genocide. I was like, we all agree on that. We all agree on that. Okay. Why is it being allowed to happen? And AIPAC is the answer. And they already knew that. And I was like, please tell me your generation is doing its homework like this. Please tell me that this is contagious. Because if we could just get AIPAC, or all the PACs, but I pick AIPAC because it's the biggest one on the left, out of the equation, then maybe we could get some people who aren't corporate owned.
So this might be is going to be me being ignorant on this. So like I'm aware of AIPAC. I'm aware of how AIPAC funds a lot of our politicians.
Yes.
But again, this is one of those, like, does AIPAC change their votes to not do something, or does AIPAC support the people that support what AIPAC wants, which is a good relationship with Israel? This is something like I can't like hard disagree with you, because I really don't understand this.
Well, if you go to Open Secrets, so if you go to Open Secrets and just scroll through AIPAC contributions to Democratic Party politicians, you're going to see like 1.5 million, 1.7 million for Jeffries. You're going to see a similar number for Chuck Schumer. You're going to see enormous amounts of money. AIPAC is so powerful. They're the second largest PAC behind the NRA. They're so powerful that they have at least one, usually two, individual people who have full-time jobs just taking care of a congressman or senator.
What do you
That's all they do.
Like they're like
That
yeah. Do you need anything? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Do you need anything? What do you need? What can I do for you? Can I, your kids need a favor?
Was it like Lindsey Graham or someone like that said like, oh yeah, everybody has an AIPAC guy.
Right. They have a babysitter. And so their agenda is to preserve Israel first. That's their first priority. Nothing wrong with that. Fine. Okay. Israel has a right to exist. No problem with that. But then it gets into a place of Israel is where the chosen people live, and they have a right to do whatever the hell they want, like commit genocide. I mean, Kamala never came close to calling Israel Gaza a genocide. No one really has, except for, I mean, Bernie just approved the weapon sales, didn't he? He just voted to send weapons to Israel or something like that. I have to double check that. But no, AIPAC, its size makes it the most relevant PAC to criticize. And obviously the hypocrisy with them encouraging or discouraging politicians from acknowledging that Israel Gaza is a genocide. So to answer your question, AIPAC is to serve the interests of elite Zionists in America. And I believe that those elite Zionists run the Democratic Party. I think it's so powerful that they run the whole goddamn party. I'm going to
offer pushback, and it's not like
yes. I hope. Please tell me I'm wrong.
Here's the thing. So this seems contradictory to most of what you were saying before. Not that any of what you just said. I can't verify. I don't know much about AIPAC. I don't look into the Israel Gaza issue that much, and people have asked me my like really strong opinion on it, and it is so, it's not like when I see what's happening, when I see people being bombed, I'm like, this is terrible. I think there should probably be a better way to do this. I don't know what the solution is. And it seems like I've heard arguments on both sides, and I'm not trying to both sides it, because there's a very clear power imbalance, and people are suffering on one side of this much, much more. That said, I'm just so disconnected from it, and it's not, I don't think most people care. I know the progressive young wings are seeing this shoved into their feed. And I care that it's happening. I care that they're suffering. But insofar as like you tell me that there is a famine in Yemen or a civil war in South Sudan, I'm so outside of the realm of, I want to help this. Yes, I don't want U.S. aid to be dismantled, so we can't give humanitarian aid to these places. But when you say like this is my number one issue, the poll I saw said it was not a big issue for why people didn't vote for Kamala. I know it mattered to a lot. I know a lot of progressives. Exactly. Right.
There was research that suggested like millions of Bernie coalition voters didn't show up because they wouldn't support genocide. Sure. I thought that I think you're right to an extent, because I actually thought what you thought for a long time until this new research came out, because I thought Cold War politics was over. Like foreign policy isn't what drives voters as much as it used to be, as like when we were kids and our parents' generation, because we used to have the Cold War, which actually would motivate our politicians to work together, because as much as the Democrats and Tip O'Neill and Reagan might hate each other, they still are going to work together so we beat the Ruskies, right? Because we hate them more. So I think you're right in that the care factor is not as strong with large swaths of voters. But in terms of the left and the progressive left, who are really disappointed with the Democratic Party, who are basically saying that it's never going to save us, it's never going to be the party that we want it to be, who are checking out and looking for labor to do something big outside the realm of politics, but still has a political effect. They didn't show up. It was a big issue for them. And
I'm not saying it's a non-zero amount of people who clearly, like, don't get me wrong, I'm in the Bay Area. I know these people who are, I mean, first of all, it's not as important in California, but there's fair enough amount of people who just didn't show up or didn't want to vote for her. That definitely, at least those people contribute to her number not being as big. But my issue is, first of all, I mean, again, I don't know this very well, but like AIPAC obviously has influence, obviously have a lot of money. I'm not sure to the extent to which they're making people change their policy to not say that it's a genocide, to not stop it, to not do an arms embargo. And while I can say that I think there should be more pressure, and if Joe Biden's going to be like, well, this is my red line like 100 times and let them cross that and clearly put zero pressure on, like, that's stupid. You need to have some sort of hard stance, and clearly he didn't. But then you look and say, well, okay, that's bad, and you don't like that, and you want to advocate for the change, and then you don't show up, and then Trump gets elected, and now he's saying, let's evict 2 million people. Let's literally ethnically cleanse them.
Literally.
And it's like, okay, why am I supposed to get so mad about AIPAC's potential softening of how the Democrats are doing this, when I'm fighting against the people that want to do everything you're accusing them of 1,000 times worse? It's hard for me to be like the fact that we're even talking about this within like 10 minutes of our conversation, where before it seemed like, hey, we really need to focus on the rallying cry. The fact that this issue, one, does not affect most Americans, and
it's a distraction.
Well, no, I don't think it's I don't think it's not important. I think it needs to be talked about. This is like thousands of people are dying. People have relatives there. People are there who came here. Like, this isn't irrelevant. But I think this is something that like doesn't unite people, because like I said, like, I'm not a centrist, I am a progressive person. But when I hear this, like, I should do more reading. I've read a few books on it, and like I still don't fully understand like what should be done. I don't know prescriptively what needs to happen.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't either. I admit I don't know either. The two-state solution doesn't sound like it's going to work. Like,
here's
I don't know.
An easy thing for me to say. I think we should stop bombing innocent people, and that's a very that's almost like a cop out, because it's like, okay, but what do you want to do, right? So like, okay, say your neighboring country comes and they steal a bunch of hostages and they kill a bunch of people, and it's like, okay, do you retaliate? How do you retaliate? What's the best way to do that? I have no clue, and that doesn't mean that I'm okay with how they've done that. I think it's actually probably pretty disgusting how many people have died. It reminds me of all the collateral damage from the Iraq War, but already the fact that you can obfuscate that one way or the other, and there are good arguments on both sides of like, well, here's how we do this, and here's what would happen if we tried it this way, and like you can get into the nitty-gritty, versus like, hey, people are dying because they don't have healthcare over here. I don't think that's the message that's going to unite people. And I think going after AIPAC or like going after politicians for being soft on Israel, like Joe Biden, like letting them cross 8 million red lines. Like, it's bad, and it clearly did resonate with a lot of voters. But I'm still hesitant to even say that that's going to change much about anything for trying to win elections. As much as that sucks, because I do think it matters.
Well,
and
I mean,
I do want suffering to stop.
There are definitely different political action committees to take a look at. I mean, it's certainly not just AIPAC, though. Like, their influence on not just the Democratic Party, but the Republican Party as well, definitely cannot be overstated. But if it's like me and Dieter have talked about before, and when it comes to democratic messaging and whatnot, going after the entities that are lobbied, are funded by the powerful, these lobbying groups to protect the powerful, especially like the pharmaceutical industries, for example. It When it comes to candidates for whatever position it is that the Democrats are going for, whether it's the Senate or the House or even the presidency, they need to be asked point blank, what will you deliver for voters that is not immediately tied to what your donors want? Because like, there are studies, one prominent study especially, that goes into detail about how the legislation that Congress passes overwhelmingly supports the corporations and these lobbying groups, special interests, big money. And if the Democrats, like, and people are aware of this, I have no doubt whatsoever. Like Bernie Sanders, I believe, woke up a whole lot of people. People understand that, like, the system is rigged. It's tilted to favor the powerful. Getting across a message that states like, hey, these rich and powerful organizations, these entities have bought and are basically in control via bribery of the House and the Senate. They need to be stopped. Like, that's why when it comes to, like, people like the Squad, for instance, AOC and that whole group, they proudly and rightfully do not take any corporate PAC money, any big special interest contributions. That needs to be a through line for democratic operations and campaigns from here on out. And
Do you think that's in some ways going to be shooting ourselves in the foot? Because as much as I don't want those PACs to be influencing people, if a PAC aligns with what I'm already saying, I feel like I should take their money and put it to good use, right?
I would say you definitely.
Well, there was a progressive PAC. There's only like one PAC like that, though, right?
Yeah.
Right. Here's the thing. Like, in the same way that a Republican, I don't know necessarily how true this is, but let's say that I was a mega pro. I just love oil. I hate clean energy. And then an oil PAC comes up and says, "Hey, you agree with what we want? Here's $2 million." That's not them telling him, "Change your vote to this. Here's $2 million."
That's something
you agree with what you want, right? And so, like,
yeah, but that's
on the flip side.
Well, I don't think it works like that, though. I don't think it works like that.
Sometimes I
Right.
think it probably. Well, I have no evidence. So I won't even say this, but like, I do think that there is like a manufactured consent where it's like, yeah, these people have been growing up reading the textbooks that are made by these lobbies who put them in these schools, who then become the lawyers and the politicians who now think the opinions that have been kind of like permeated through their schooling system, and then they support them because they say what they want to, or they want the lobbyists support them because the lobbyists hear what they want from these people, and maybe people are switching their votes because of that. I don't know how easy
the reason
but it doesn't matter because they're doing it
in line. Hold on one second, Stapat. In line with what Stapat was just saying, though, there's two sides to this that you're making good points about. You know, is AIPAC really as powerful as I claim they are? Maybe, maybe not. Money in politics is an enormous problem. It has gotten worse since Citizens United.
Mm-hmm.
So my obsession with AIPAC stems 80, 90% from them being the largest PAC on the left.
Yeah.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is it doesn't.
And they own both sides, by the way. They have people on both sides, which should be illegal.
Sure. What I'm saying is it doesn't matter if the person is only doing it because of the money, or the money's coming because that person's doing what those people with money want them to do. Either way, they're doing it. And if the determining factor is that money, as if but for that money they would not have that position, then that's where I'm like, okay, we need to cut this off. And I
think that's the case more often than not. I think that's the case.
It could be. It's hard.
Think about look at the personalities.
But
look at the personalities of the people on the left that are in power, that are elected, that are part of the establishment.
Yeah,
they're not badass conflict lovers. They're go along to get along. They do what they're told for the most part. The politician that you're describing sounds awesome. It sounds
the theoretical
awesome,
politician.
But these PACs represent an economic force that corrupts the political process. It was never supposed to be this way. It's way too much. It's way too much. And now, with the way we have media, there's really no excuse. There's really no excuse for not being able to get your message out there and for people to consume it on their own terms. I learned this in film school actually knew it before film school, but the reason why people always say the book was better than the movie is because not only do you get to spend more time with the characters and in the story, but you get to consume the story on your terms. Right?
Yeah, you give everyone the voices, you pace it the way you want to pace. That's why
you pick it up and put it down when you want.
A nerdier version of that, but I like manga way more than I like anime because I can put the voices and the pacing of the story. It's not 6 episodes to have Goku charge up. He charges up as fast as I read, right? So
I
don't even know what manga is, man. I'm like, how old are you? How old are you, Soy?
Speaking my language.
How old do you think I am? I always ask. What do I come off as?
Late 20s?
Yeah, late 20s. I'm 28. But I'm just on the cusp of Zoomerism. So if you need me to translate anything before you go on that podcast, let me know. I can explain Skibbity Toilet and brain rot and all that. So
let me do this one really quick.
Just cusp as well. I'm 29.
Let me do this one really quick. This is from Latino Mifune. I don't know. Is that
Mifune?
A cool Mifune? I think it's necessary for there to be social stigmas placed on certain things such as bigotry, child predation, and fascism, where it's okay to ridicule these things so society can remain free. I mean, yeah, like we did that after civil rights with the KKK, right? Like you saw someone wearing a robe and it was no longer, it was never really acceptable. But the point is that social stigmas exist for a reason. It can be productive.
The issue for that is I don't think the stigma's really gone away as much as people kind of forgot why we needed them because we became a more equitable society. And then I think you've seen this on the rise in the past 10 years. You call someone a racist, and then that kind of the buck stops there. But you need to. You shouldn't have to, but you need to explain why that's bad. Even though obviously it's bad to treat people differently because of race. So many people, it became just this thing. It's like, oh, you're racist, and now I can write off everything you say. Unfortunately, because of fascism and racism and bigotry on the rise, and these people are educating themselves in this, bullshit science, reading some Charles Murray book or some bell curve thing. Now you have to contend with those things and disprove them. Now I have to break out my book about why phrenology is fucking stupid. And it's easy. Don't get me wrong, right? Because it's like, hey, maybe your skull shape doesn't determine anything, and that's fucking ridiculous. Maybe the amount of melanin in your skin doesn't determine anything. That's fucking ridiculous. But you still have to have that extra step of I'm not just stigmatizing you and ostracizing you. I'm also explaining why you're a moron.
Exactly.
With the science to back it up. You have a hard out at 7, right?
Yeah, it's fine. I can go a little bit later. This is a great.
Do you mind if I have 2 or 3 super chats? Do you mind if I read them? I think.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay,
what do you got?
Let me just scroll through. Well, I've got $2 from Cody Moon. Okay, well this is not pertinent. They said, "Where's the hat?" They want me to put this hat on. Give me a sec.
Oh boy,
nice. There's the hat. All right. Cody always gives me money to put the hat on. I don't know why, but $5 from Focus says, "Will the Democratic Party support reparations for foundational Black Americans?" I don't know what a foundational Black American is, but what are you guys?
Probably a descendant of slaves is probably what he means,
right?
Like if you can prove that you descended from slaves, then you're entitled to benefits.
That's definitely difficult to navigate. I suppose you can say because. I mean,
I think we should just get affirmative action back, and that's a start, right? And then maybe we can work on reparations after that. But I think
as much as it sucks, it's just not very popular. And I think there's very good cases for reparations. Unfortunately, yes. I don't think a lot of people are on board because they see it as unfair. Even though you know what is unfair? 400 years of oppression and slavery.
Yeah.
But regardless, if we do programs like social programs, welfares, things that uplift people in poverty, I think. even though that's not a direct reparation to the people that were directly affected, these, I guess, FBA is the acronym, those things are going to help more people. They're going to be more popular, and it's going to help society in a way that reparations might not be addressing specifically. And I think, yeah, you just kind of have to cast a wider net if you want to get more people on board, unfortunately, even if it might be a good idea. But that's just my take on it. I'm also not educated on how you would do reparations. So maybe really
neither am I. I'm embarrassed to say that neither am I. And I just think you're 3 steps ahead with reparations. You got to get affirmative action back at least. And then you got to de-racist the police system, the criminal justice system.
It's
one
like
thing that I learned,
genders thing, right? It's like there might be a good argument for gender spectrum and how there might be, that maybe there's infinite genders, but so many people that's so esoteric to them, you got to get them on board with like, hey, a person might have dysphoria and might want to present differently. Like you got to start there, and then you can do this other stuff later.
The one thing we could make a little bit of progress on just on this subject, I learned this in social psychology, so it does come from an academic setting, but this was proven through research in the field of psychology at least 20 years ago when I learned it. We're all at least a little bit racist. We all are at least a little bit sexist.
Yeah.
We're all at least
Everyone's
a little bit
biases.
Homophobic.
But
like I grew up being taught that like homosexuality is a sin, right? And it's against God's will, and there's something wrong with you. Like you're like an alcoholic if you're gay. You just there's something wrong in the chemicals in your brain.
See, that's the argument. As much as I hate it, I hate when people are like, "Oh, all the homophobes are closeted homosexuals." But when you say it's like this tempting sin, it's like, what do you mean? Like, are you saying, what do you mean it's tempting? Like, what do you mean it's like alcohol? What do you mean it's like drugs? Like, it sounds like you actually have some closeted notions. But everyone's got a little bit of something. But the problem is, and I talked about this in my video, where like these DEI leaders will be like, everyone is complicit in white supremacy, and it's like, what you mean by that is what you're saying, like everyone's got like some racist tendencies, the bias is shifted against black people or against minorities in this country, white people are favored, white people have beauty standards, like that's what you mean by white supremacy. But 99% of people hear that and they're like, what do you mean I'm complicit in what the KKK or the Nazis do?
Now you're guilting me.
Right.
Now you're guilting me.
Like this workshop sucks. I hate it. And that's definitely a branding thing. That's on topic of what we're talking about. It's like you can't sell it to people like that. You have to be like, hey, like I mean, even with the academic like background, you have to still explain to them like things that aren't really intuitive. Like, hey, you might not really be thinking about this, but like I could show you like a implicit bias test, and like you realize like you're kind of favoring people that look a certain way when you're not even thinking about it. But like even that's hard to explain. So it's very hard to get people to recognize that for sure. So I see.
But I call it racial blind spots. Like it's something that education is the conflict of ignorance, right? You're coming out of ignorance through education. It's not indoctrination,
right?
It's education.
Exactly. And I learned that in school, where it's like, okay, like you can explain to me the concept of redlining, and that's such an easy one to be like, look, no one's doing this today, really, or legally at least. But it used to be legal to put people in these parts of the city and to say, you're the poor neighborhood now. And like, obviously now people who are poor 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago are not going to suddenly just become upper class. And like, that's such an easy, like, concept to explain to people and see like, hey, wait a minute, like maybe society is a little biased against these people, even though it's not as obvious now. Like 50 years ago is not that long ago. These people are still alive. Like this created a underclass of people in certain areas. This created over policing. Like it's very easy to show someone that in a school setting or just by reading a book. And unfortunately, it's not taught enough. But you're right, it is education, and so much of it needs to be education.
Oh, big time. And I think like broad strokes of applying certain policies, etc., can go a long way. Megan here in chat says, I agree, programs have to address poverty instead of race for broad support. Yeah, because a lot of it really does stem from poverty, like a lot of these issues, and then like, but conservatives weaponize that and like think, oh, poverty means black, poverty means minorities, and That's why
you're poor. You're poor
does,
because you're
yeah.
lazy. That's what
right.
they
Yeah,
say.
yeah. That's why I
brand.
think Democrats need to just flip that on its head. It's like no, like this shouldn't be a racial thing at all. Like it shouldn't be the main focus. And like I totally agree with, because when you're centered around like identity and like you're making that the sole focus, you're going to lose a lot of people. It should be like, well, poverty affects everybody. Everybody is susceptible to this. Like like a lot of
you're
people
not wrong to say that a minority population might be more affected or might disproportionately face that, but you can still help them. And just, it's weird to say not talk about it, but like just don't make that the focus, and suddenly like more people are on board. Yeah.
Broadly speaking, like if you like communicate to people like, hey, like most people in this country really are like 2 or 3 missed paychecks away from becoming homeless.
That's that
resonates. Yeah. And I did just want to say, I know we have a lot of people watching right now, and we really, really appreciate it. Make sure you're subscribed to Stateless Patriot as well as Either McBusiness. it means a whole lot, honestly. Like we really
can you put your link in disc or somewhere, maybe even in my chat, so I can copy that and put it in the description, because I have details in there for sure. There's one more super chat while you do that, from Focus, $10. Thank you so much. It says this was back when we were talking about Israel, because I was saying it's not as important to most people. He said it does affect most Americans because all of our tax dollars are going over there. We are paying for a genocide instead of uplifting our communities. I would say that we're funding it. It matters that our tax dollars are going there. It is a very small amount compared to the amount of money we spend on Social Security, Medicare,
our own military.
And it's not as our own military. Like, it's not a zero-sum game. And I really don't like the narrative of, oh, why are we funding all this stuff? Why is all this US aid going to all this stuff? And it's like, first of all, it increases our hegemonic power, increases our interest, it gives us allies, and they give us stuff back. And maybe it's obviously going to be imbalanced. Like, we are the biggest one, we have the most money, but we get stuff out of this, and it's for America's interest. Like, we don't just do it for no reason. And you could be upset that your tax dollars are going to it, and that's something that if you don't like it, you can advocate against for it. But the idea that it's like, well, why should we fund Ukraine when our veterans are dying? It's like, well, we can do both of those things.
We can do both if we actually had a budget that made sense.
Exactly.
So this was what we were saying a minute ago. When workers want their due, the media calls it laziness. When the rich are lazy, we call them socialites.
Well, I really like the narrative that people say. I don't know if this is kind of like demonizing welfare, but saying like, oh, it's welfare for the rich. It's tax cuts for the rich, or it's or like when people kind of like flip the Republican script around on the people that
they say, what is it? It's privatized profits, socialized losses.
Which I think that's already too complicated for the average American, unfortunately, even though it's very spot on. I think
unfortunately,
most people don't even know what like privatization means, unfortunately. So it's like,
so when the rich are losers, they're not really losers because the government takes care of them, something like that. We can work on it. But there you go. We just stumbled onto a marketing issue. Right? Like, what's the actual communication? What's the zinger? What's the zinger?
Yeah. Speaking of bad marketing, I don't know if you guys watched my conversation with JJ McCall on Monday, probably not, but we talked about something which I have now named piss politics. And now I've backronymed it too. It's push and insist to stop spin, which is all reporters. When you have some bullshitting politician up there, do not ever move on in the interview until they answer your question. Like when you nail them down on the like, hey, do you think that Joe Biden won the 2020 election and JD Vance doesn't go on? Just don't let him talk anymore. Just keep asking him that until he keeps going. And that's piss politics, because it's like when your dog pisses on the floor and you shove their face into the piss. It's like, like you are going to own this. This is your fucking position, and I'm not going to let you talk about anything else. So I am so tired of that. I'm tired of people not holding people to account and their feet to the fire, and I'm tired of the bad branding. But I think, there's a lot of work to be done of channeling this anger that you're talking about, that everyone's feeling. And I'm feeling it so much that I'm like, wow, like I want to stop what I'm doing at my job, which I actually think is a good job and does righteous work for, like, I work in like medical, and it's like, this is awesome, but I feel like this country's going to shit so fast. I want to be fighting this right now. That anger is there for me. I am angry, I'm mad, I'm scared, and we need some sort of outlet for that.
So what's the specific change you want? Because for me, it's generational. Like, we need to get the baby boomer neoliberals out of leadership in the DNC. They've been in charge for 32 years.
We got David Hogg. He's VP, right? What do you think of David Hogg? Because I think he's a start. Right?
I think he's start, but I think it's going to be elder millennials, because I think Gen Xers are too capitalist. because they were outside of college by the time the tech boom happened, whereas millennials weren't. We didn't benefit from the tech boom. We got screwed over by the housing crisis. I graduated, and then 2 years later, the housing crisis like just killed any entrepreneurial ideas that I wanted. I had so many things that I wanted to do coming out of my management consulting job because I had really great relationships with people with money. And then they got hurt in the housing crisis. And so I didn't have any capital to start any of these really interesting ideas with.
Well,
so that hurt.
So you persevered, definitely.
Yeah, no, I persevere, but that's because, I mean, that has everything to do with me coming from privilege, though. I mean, like,
it's if I had me, honestly, like I was able to use my college and you know, like I have a really nice job, a software engineering job that I wouldn't have if I didn't have parents that gave me all this time and money for my college and all this stuff. Like, I like that you and I are both leveraging that and trying to like make a difference for it, because I really hate that like a lot of people just do the whole "fuck you got mine" and like you're trying to give back and say like everyone should have these opportunities. Everyone should. I shouldn't be here because of my privilege. I should be here because of my good ideas. And there's so many good ideas that are getting stifled because it's like, well, I want to go make a YouTube channel, but I have to pay my medical bills and I don't have time for this.
It's an oxymoronic thing with me because I grew up with privilege, but because of where I stood in the social status of my family, as the weakest, as the youngest, as the smallest, as the one who was constantly excluded. I was an accidental pregnancy. I was not a planned pregnancy. So I was, you know, holding the family back. There was huge age gaps, 5 and 9 years between me and my two brothers. So I was the annoying youngest brother, you know? So I say, like, look, I don't know what it's like to be black in America. I don't know what it's like to be a brown immigrant in America. I don't know what it's like to be a woman in America, but I do know the feeling of being right and being wronged because of it, because I express that there's something wrong, because I say this isn't fair. I do know the feeling of powerlessness. That's what it really comes down to, is powerlessness. If there were mechanisms in place for wrongfully accused African-American males in urban areas to actually get representation and be defended by someone that knew the law as well as that prosecutor or whatever the system, however the system works, then there wouldn't be as many problems. But the system just doesn't take care of those people because the racism is a part of the system. And the sexism is too. Although, you know, the biggest criticism of DEI, I don't know if you know much about it, but I've heard and read that, you know, the biggest beneficiaries of DEI are white women.
Yeah.
So it's like, what do we, you know, we gotta tweak that. We got to evolve, right? We got to learn from our mistakes and do better. It's about the process of advocating for change. It's not just by the process of selling incrementalism. Oh yeah, we can't get that done. All they do, how many since you've been alive? I mean, I'm, you know, since before you were self-aware of politics, Democrats have been talking about the limitations of government.
Mm-hmm.
They have been talking. It's not about, I mean, aren't we the side of the explorers? I talk about survivors versus explorers as the easiest way of breaking down people's personality types. Lefties are pretty much all explorers. And the right is like predominantly survivors. And if you are caught up in survivalism, you have that attitude that you were just referencing of, I got mine, fuck you. Mm-hmm. And not only are you not going to get yours, but I'm going to subjugate you. It's that Lyndon B. Johnson quote, right? Give a white man someone of color to look down on and to let him pick your pocket. And it's been working for 44 years. And it was working a lot longer than that. It's just, that's how long I've been around. Mm-hmm. Because I was unaware of it. It was because my political awakening happened when I was traveling in New Zealand and watched Fahrenheit 9/11 when Bush got right before Bush got reelected.
The Michael Moore documentary?
Michael Moore. Because I went in there. I was a student at the time. So I was like in that mode of learning in my life. And by the way, statistically speaking, 18 to 24 is when people out there are most impressionable, although social media may have changed that range. But I was open-minded. I came in there, I was like, okay, let's see what you got. And then the research came and I was like, this is undeniable. This is undeniable. They sold us on a war that we did not need to go to. Like Afghanistan, you want to sell us on Afghanistan? Okay, maybe. You know, that's probably where bin Laden is, maybe. But Iraq, there's never any weapons of mass destruction discovered. There was never any connection between Al Qaeda and Iraq. I mean, it almost feeds off of what we're talking about of the othering, right? Oh, Iraq, of course, the Iraqis are in bed with Al Qaeda because all those Middle Easterners are all in bed with each other, and they're all anti-American.
Yeah, never mind that we just fought a Gulf War where Kuwait and Iraq were against each other, and clearly there's Sunni and Shia and all sorts of different people, but it's like, the brown, I don't like that. Like it's so easy. And that's the problem. I mean, just to tie this full circle, but it's like that's better messaging, unfortunately. Like it's very easy to compartmentalize and say, look, the enemy, go get them, go get those guys, instead of like explaining the geopolitics of the Middle East to like your average American who just does not give a shit and can't be bothered to understand it. But yeah, no, that's an interesting radicalization story because even though we have a big generational difference, like I have a very similar story where like I'm not radicalized by Fahrenheit 9/11, but I grew up watching stuff like that, like a Jon Stewart, like some Michael Moore documentaries for sure. And I just watched, I don't think is this Michael Moore, Iraq for Sale? I don't remember if that's him or not.
These big ones were Sicko, Fahrenheit 9/11, Fahrenheit 11/9. And there was one other one.
Let me just see if Iraq for Sale is him, so I don't spread misinformation. But I do recommend everyone go watch it and watch.
Yes, I mean he's not perfect, but he's important. Like, and I think
no, it's Robert Greenwald. Excuse me, but yeah,
when I was applying to film school, they made you talk about 5 movies that you loved, and I used Fahrenheit 9/11 as one of them because it had such a profound effect on me. Yeah. And I said his problem is the reason why he's not going to be more influential in a long-term way is because he's a fat fuck.
It's so funny. I was going to say that as a joke, but like I'm like,
no, it's true.
Kind of true.
Like he looks like somebody mooching off the system. He looks like somebody that eats McDonald's every day and expects the American taxpayer to pay for his medical bills.
I hate how right
that's what he. That's the branding problem with him.
If he just looked like Gavin McInnes, he would have been like 100 times bigger. But because you watch, have you seen Team America where he's like, it's just like fat slob, like hot dog juice just running down him, and it's like that. It's unfortunate that hurts the messaging. And like, just like I detest that me working out somehow makes me more credible, but it does. So I'm going to try to leverage that. And I do like that people like you and me and anyone else in this space can be a Michael Moore. Like we don't need to be this like funded person to go interview people and hear their stories, to investigate stuff and kind of bring it up. Now, there is the danger of like, how do you fact check this? And even Michael Moore is susceptible to getting things wrong. I just watched Sicko recently, and he brought up like there's one anecdote that he brought up of someone who got denied healthcare, and his wife like sued people because they're like, my husband would have lived. And in this specific case, this isn't like a commentary on the whole system, but in this specific case, it did seem like they justifiably denied him because it was like, oh, we want this like experimental thing, we don't know that's going to work, it's going to cost $50 million, we can't approve this, like it's not guaranteed to work and it's incredibly expensive. And this is like kind of played for ethos. And like watching that, I'm like, well, what else does Michael Moore get wrong? But then also he's very capable of making a good argument and exposing things that are fucking insane. So it's good that we have more of Michael Moores out there, and it's good that we don't have everyone who looks like Michael Moore being a Michael Moore, because I think it's good that we can all like check each other, that we can admit wrong. And when it is in a YouTube space, it's much easier to be like, hey guys, on this date, here's my video of this thing, I got this wrong, I apologize for that, versus I have to go through the 3-year process of making a film and then release it in theaters, and it's never going to be edited again, and I can't amend that. I think that I really enjoy how this space is evolving to do what you're saying and really not radicalize necessarily, but like educate people on what is happening and how to get them out of those I don't know, societal locks. What's the Andrew Tate thing? Break you out of the matrix, like they just don't teach you everything, unfortunately. And I'm glad that happened to you, and I'm glad.
Well, we need to start using the word radical to describe the right, because they are radical and it's alliterative. So the radical right, the alt right, the white trash right.
I've been giving everyone Trump nicknames, so I think that works pretty well.
And name calling has its place. So this is we'll finish on. I have to go soon, but
real quick, a super chatter $2 said exactly. So whatever you were saying, my chat loves it, and they wanted to pay money to agree with you. Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome. I'm glad to hear that. I wish they give me money.
Go give them money. Oh, Stateless, did you send me your thing? Can I put that in the
in the private chat, Stateless?
In the private chat? Yeah,
whatever. Or that's the easiest way to get him something, is the private chat. Okay, so Soy.
Yes.
How do you think you beat the schoolyard bully?
What's the method? It's a combination of, like I said, it's humiliation and aroused. He was just being an idiot about the song. And so like it's like that didn't really resonate with people, versus you take that energy of humiliation and then you back it up with like you're saying, like these populist casting wide net messages. That is how you do it. You really do just have to humiliate these people because that's what they listen to. It's this weird fascist politics game where it's like, well, my daddy looks bad now, I can't support him. And unfortunately, I don't want to fall into this. And I think that we could easily, I want to be cautious. You can't never admit fault, because that's what they do, and it works. But we need to be able to at least be the rational people who are like, hey, I got this wrong and I'm going to recover from it. But, you know, you got to own it and laugh about it.
Bernie did that.
And move past that. Yeah, Bernie did that. And I think that's the reason why people still like him versus like, I don't know.
What if Bernie looked like Gavin Newsom? Do you think he would have beaten Hillary in 2016?
I don't think so. I don't think that would have changed it that much. I don't think it was his image. I think people loved the kind, giving, charitable old man thing. I do
as well.
I don't think that's what fucked him. I think a lot of people, the word socialist is poison in American politics. And no matter how that was for him, I think partly a branding problem where it's like, look, people aren't going to buy this. I know a lot of people who are good faith, legitimate people who just heard that, like they were either Cuban, like former Cubans who got away from Castro, people who just grew up in the 80s during the Red Scare, and they're like, socialist, that's bad. And it just ended there. It didn't matter how much I explained it. It didn't matter how much I said, hey, Medicare for all, XYZ. It was too radical, even if his policies themselves weren't that crazy. And I think that was just a branding thing. And I think AOC is shaping up to be something where it's like, look, I still have all these messages, but I'm not branding them the exact same way. Everything's a branding problem now, and we just need to be better at it. And also bullying people. I love nicknames. Those are great. Trump, if we take anything from Trump, it's like absolutely like shit on these people, call them weird. Not the Trump supporter that you're talking to, right? Because that's against the ethos of my video. I don't think that works in convincing someone, but these people aren't there to be convinced. These people are there to pontificate. They're there to spread horrible, awful lies. They're there to make everyone else's life worse, and you can shove them into the dirt and grind them into the dust. Like they're worthless. They suck. Like do not.
So the social strategy. So the social strategy of like separation, right? Like divide and conquer. I would pitch it as you're either with the Confederate flag waving, Bible beating gun nuts, or you're with America, right? Like divisive politics. The left needs to figure out the politics of division because they work now. And I also think that, you know, like I was saying, they have empowered this guy, or tried to 3 times. They did twice. And we're about to go through, we are in the middle of hell. And the only way out of hell is through hell. You don't go back up the way you came. You go through hell and come out a different way. So that's what these next 2 to 4 years are going to be like. And I invoke the alcoholic's definition of insanity of doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. But the schoolyard bully, it's interesting how intellectual your response was to my question about the schoolyard bully, because I think I talk about it in at the end of one of the videos. I think of this, I try to reduce things down to like metaphors if you can, and the schoolyard bully is a really good one, and the classroom is a really good one. Like, yeah, I'm one of those guys that did his homework. Which one are you? Like, you know, the schoolyard bully is going, you have to stand up to the bully, talk shit, dare him to hit you, and then if he does hit you, he knocks you on your ass because he's bigger than you. And then everybody else sees it. You got to take the hit. You got to be willing to take the shots. And I think a reason why a lot of Democrats or lefties who want to be kind or lead with the politics of joy, like Kamala did, they're reluctant to call. Hate. Right. There's nothing wrong with hating evil. And there's like, what was I going to say? Oh, shit. I don't know. Stat Pat, go. You have something to say.
The politics of joy, like the obsession with, you know, when we fight, we win, like, but not actually put up a fight. It doesn't fly. Like people are pissed off. You got to speak to that anger. Like joy is great once you win, but you need to like act like a winner. You need to actually win first. You actually need to have a winning message to start with. Like,
what I thought was really good was that, and this was like not direct. This wasn't like a match their rhetoric and really angrily fight back, but the whole like, hey, what do you have to say about, you know, transgender surgeries for this guy, illegal immigrant in prison? And they're just like, who gives a shit? That's so irrelevant. This is important. The American people are hurting. Let's help them, right? I think that really resonates with them. And that's like, even, you don't even have to humiliate them there. It's just like, it was the weird thing. It's like, why the fuck are you focused on this? This is so stupid. Like, this is so irrelevant. What, Haitians eating cats? What the fuck? Like,
so the next essay you got to check out is the one called The Right-Wing Magic Trick: How American Exceptionalism Became American Narcissism.
I think I've seen that one. That was
yeah, that's where I talk about how magic is the art of distraction. So they're distracting you with the transgender issues. The real agenda is just the tax cuts and the excessive military spending, and through the courts making it a nationalist Christian nation. I call it Confederate Christian nationalism. You want to use an available brand. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You want to use something like, this is the thing. I have two words that I'm trying to sell more lefties on. One is progressive, because it's got such a rich history. I mean, I love one great quote from William Jennings Bryan that I'm going to see if I can get right now. He says, "You shall not push down upon the brow of labor." Fuck. A crown. Oh, I got it. "You shall not press down upon the brow of labor a crown of thorns. You shall not crucify mankind on a cross of gold." He said that 100 years ago. And he was it's as if he could be talking about evangelicals today.
That's
so I want to go
hard
on
to remember. Maybe we should reword it a little bit.
Well, crucify American progress or whatever. But progressive has a rich history. We shouldn't. It's a way to unite these different factions who are really frustrated with the DNC, but still have hope that we can take over the DNC. It also sounds really sexy to say primarium with a progressive. It sounds good. And then the other one is Confederacy, man. I'm working on an essay called Fascism's Favorite Formula, Scapegoat Politics. I mean, I actually said in the Who Are MAGA series that I came out with, Confederate Christian nationalism. That's what it is. It's not just Christian. That's not, again, specificity. It's not good enough to say just Christian nationalism anymore. Put Confederate in there. It makes it sexy. Well, it's like, oh, like you're talking about, like, oh, well, I don't like that. Like, of course I'm not a Confederate. Like, bring it back, resurrect it. It's a weapon.
Yeah, no,
it's a weapon.
I'd be careful though, because like, what do you do when they're just like, but look, I've got a black friend, he's Republican. Like, then it's like, I feel like that one might be a little easier to dismiss for them, in the same way that, like, if you unfortunately keep calling them Nazis when they're doing Nazi shit, like, it's like, oh well,
there's got to be a goal.
I like a Jewish guy, but then that now they're actually just kind of Nazis.
Well, there's got to be a policy goal behind the rhetoric. So the policy goal behind Confederate Christian nationalism is taxing mega churches. Those are not nonprofits. Okay. Those are for-profit entertainment businesses, and they should be taxed as such.
And that's a good message too, because I know a lot of people at the right who don't like those people. Like, even the right, like, kind of shits on Joel Osteen, and you're like, look how corrupt this is. And we're not attacking religion per se; we're attacking corruption. And in the same way, I hate this, but like, you can say crony capitalism is the problem. Unfortunately, like, I think you can get a lot of people on board with that, because if you attack capitalism, you get all the Red Scare back and you get all this, but it's like, hey, crony capitalism or corruption is bad. You attack those. That's the branding you need to get those people.
Well, I would call it conservative capitalism. I mean, we're living in
that might be a better way.
We're living in 44 years worth of conservative capitalism, which is all based on government is the problem. Even though we had a president who was elected 4 times that proved us that that's not true. And by the way, let me finish on this and then I got to go. Yeah. So Ben Shapiro is a bully, and he's a certain kind of bully. And here's how you take him down. He, along with Tim Pool, Stephen Miller, to a lesser extent, Steve Bannon, but they are what I like to call revenge nerds. Ugly on the outside, ugly on the inside.
They got Shapiro in high school, sort of thing.
Ben Shapiro, and I even put it here. You go. Here's my like slogan, like thinking in terms of sound bites. He never got the girl, and he never won the big game. It's that simple. He never had that feeling in high school. He went early to college. Like, read his bio. He was at like Harvard Law when he was like 23 or something ridiculous. Like, they're younger. I don't know what he started, but he was just like, you can tear these people down. Like, that's my value. Okay. That's my superpower, as they say in business culture commentary, is what's your superpower? Basically it's just another way of saying, what's your value add? Where is your value here? My value is making the bullies feel small, the white trash Nazi bullies to be specific. And the reason why I don't think more people do that is because these are not just bullies. These are bullies with guns, and they might want to kill you. So that's my superpowers. I'm not willing. I'm going to say whatever the fuck I want. And if it gets me killed, so be it, because I got these videos online that'll become really, really popular. They'll become really popular if I get, assassinated in public. It's like, oh my God, I got to check out his YouTube channel. Wait, he's making all these really great points, deconstructing the intellectual fallibility of fucking conservatism. Because resistance to change in a world that is defined by change is not only stupid, it is not only useless, it is counterproductive to making a better society. Whether you like it or not, whoever's watching this that might be MAGA or conservative, this world is driven by change. Everything in the private sector, all the people that are making money, all those billionaires at the inauguration, they are successful because they were very good at anticipating change.
Yeah.
Right. I really like the channeled anger. Stateless, do you have it's hard to follow up, but
you guys can keep talking. You guys are welcome to keep talking. I
do need to head out to. I've got a debate.
So go ahead. Yeah, I'm exhausted as well. No, Megan's pretty much in full agreement. Joel Osteen sucks. Neither is right. Use biblical language. You gotta get the party to face the true divide, which is class division. And corruption bad is the branding, which is popular. Removing excess funding in the public sector is change, for example. Speaking of Doge, that's a whole other thing. But yeah, no. Change is inevitable. It just depends on who is in control of the change and how we can affect it, how we can influence it as well.
Soy, final thoughts, and please come back, dude. Let's do this again. This was epic, and I promise I'll
fun conversation.
Of course.
I think I agree with you guys for the most part. There needs to be a lot of branding. There needs to be a lot of aggression channeled through good people. I'm hesitant and I'm scared. I don't want to fall into the brain rot that I see on the right, where these like messages define their entire party, their entire politic, and it's not backed by anything. So I tread carefully into the populism, into the messages, but I still think it needs to happen, and I still think we need to transform it in the way that you are describing, with emotion, with messaging, and with just better politicians. Because goddamn, if they're not the lamest ducks that I've seen in quite a while, they're losers. Yeah, they're no good. They're so bad we don't like them.
That's good. I like that. That's Trump, a good Trump.
You're what are you? Determined leader. He's very good. He's doing a very good job. And I want to say silly because it's the first adjective that comes to mind, but strong, stateless. He's strong. He's very strong. We love stateless patriots. You guys, there's the Trump nicknames.
Megan says yes. I enjoy soy man.
Soy man. Yeah. At least I'm a man now. I'm not a soy boy. I've upgraded. But yeah, no. Thanks so much for having me on. Stateless. I'll try to find. I can't find the chat, but I think once I close this, I'll be able to grab that link and throw it in the descriptions. Check these guys out. I like their stuff. And yeah, let's make a better party. God damn.
Please.
All right, baby.
While we still can.
For Stateless Patriot and the Soy Pill, I am Dieter McBusiness, reminding you that you don't get change in America by asking nicely.
Take it easy, guys. Enjoy the Super Bowl.
Good night. Oh, there's the link too.
And